Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to The History of Horror Cinema, a personal podcast journey through the good, bad, and ugly of the history of horror movies, based on my blog, The History of Horror Cinema. The Invisible Ray, 1936. This science fiction horror film released by Universal at the beginning of 1936 is fairly forgettable and more than usually implausible, saved only by the interest value in an always welcome re-teaming of Bela Lugosi with Boris Karloff, their third within 2 years. The director of The Invisible Ray was Lambert Hillier, who co-directed one of Lon Chaney's earliest silent film notable roles in Riddle Gone, and also 1936's Dracula's Daughter. The screenplay was by John Colton, who hits the ground limping with a clunky foreword seeking to open our closed minds to the amazing scientific possibilities of the age, but instead sounds like dialogue declaimed by Criswell in Plan 9 from Outer Space's prologue. Who are we in this youngest and smallest of planets to say that the invisible ray is impossible to science? We're now primed for the preposterousness that this was meant to dispel, and by that yardstick the ensuing film doesn't disappoint. Karloff, billed as such in stark impact contrast to the more ordinary, fully named Bela Lugosi, is a reclusive zealot of an astronomer, Dr. Janos Rook, equipped with an impressive telescope in his observatory high up in the Carpathian Mountains. He is doted on by his blind mother, a strikingly poised Violet Kemble Cooper, who knows he is still a shy, awkward little boy inside a brusque, intimidating surface. He is also fatally leaving his beautiful but drippy wife Diane to die on the vine in his research mania, Frances Drake, a weaker damsel in distress than her Yvonne Orlac in Mad Love. Karloff carries off this single-mindedness well, offset by an unusually attractive curly hair and moustache combination. His frosty severity in the role means that Lugosi gets to balance him with soft, goatee-bearded urbanity, rather than his default setting of Dracula hypno-glower, which he all too easily fell into in his worst movies as Dr. Benet, a French astrochemist. One wonders why the writer gave him Gallic ancestry, as Lugosi was only comfortable in his own Hungarian accent. More sensible would have been to make him a fellow countryman of Rook, thus fitting his native tones like a suave glove. No matter, for there are bigger, stellar matters to discuss. Rook invites a group of illustrious scientists to hear his claim that he has harnessed the power of the nebula of Andromeda, which he can capture and convert into a beam of awesome power that will play back our prehistoric past. All he need do is find a fallen meteor that will give him such properties. He can posture all he likes, for nothing can withstand the more penetrating ray of his mum's perceptiveness. With chilling, gypsy-like prescience, she warns him, "Your experiments are your friends. Leave people alone." Though he is something of a mummy's boy, Mother Rook's words don't stop her son traveling to Africa as part of Dr. Benet's expedition to find the meteor with his wife in tow, a travel writer, Lady Stevens, and her nephew Ronald, the formidable character actress Beulah Bondi, and the less so Frank Lawton, and the writer's wealthy husband Dr. Stevens, played by Walter Kingsford. Rook locates the meteor, but gets more than he bargained for, courtesy of radiation poisoning that gives him a phosphorescent glow and kills any living creature he touches, beginning with his poor dog. The luminous shimmer effect is weak in execution for a Universal film, looking drawn on and somewhat tacky. While Rook is occupied with a new career as a glow-stick Typhoid Mary, he fails to look to his wife, who Ronald is making goo-goo eyes at. Thus begins one of those achingly tiresome love triangle subplots that thankfully gain minor screen time. Sample dialogue, Diane to Ronald, "Oh, darling, hold me tight. We're going to need each other so very much." Mercifully, the plot grabs the steering wheel and takes a sharp turn away from Noel Coward, just not suitable in a horror film in my view, into macho revenge flick when Rook finds out back home that his discovery has been stolen by Benet. He fakes his own death, and then in Paris undertakes with serial killer precision the systematic murder of each of the 6 people he views as associates to the theft. He cuts a swathe through half of them, whilst erasing symbolic church statues each time, as though counting off the numbers on his hand, until a telltale phosphorescent handprint around the dead Lady Stephen's neck tips off Binet that his former colleague is very much alive. The not-quite-so-good doctor concocts a party that he hopes will draw Rook in like a moth, leading to an amusing black humour exchange for Lugosi, where he is asked what will happen when someone tries to apprehend the luminous lunatic. "He will die," replies a bemused Binet, his composure briefly dented by having to state the obvious. Rook begins to finish off the remaining perceived swindlers, including Binet, but his long-dormant conscience surfaces just in time to save his wife from radioactive retribution. Compounding the emasculation even more, Mother appears and scolds him into throwing himself through the window, where he flames out, in imitation of the film itself. The Invisible Ray suffered from a tight shooting schedule, as well as shoddy scripting, yet even the recycling of Flash Gordon sets and footage from Kenneth Strickfaden's gizmos from James Whale's 2 Frankenstein films couldn't save it from going over $68,000 beyond its intended $235,000 budget. Universal did manage to save some money on salaries, however. In spite of co-star billing, Lugosi still endured a fee considerably less than Karloff, $4,000 compared to Karloff's $15,625, as noted in Stephen Jacobs' wonderful Boris Karloff, More Than a Monster. To his credit, the Hungarian maintained friendly relations with his English colleague. Karloff at least used the film profitably as an opportunity also to recruit many more members to the nascent Screen Actors Guild.